Hello and welcome to Linden Hill Racing Circuit for our third programme covering the Autoglim Classic Festival, organised by the Classic Touring Car Racing Club. Today again bringing you the very best action from the UK's top classic touring car and saloon car racing.
It's the second race of the day for the Thermex Classic Saloon and Historic Touring Car Series in association with Dunlop. This the class for pre-1966 cars. The result of race 1 determined the grid for this race, so Brian Stevens and Les Nash line up on the front row of the grid, ahead of Roger Stanford and Thomas Lely DeVille as Cortinas from Class F look out the first two rows of the grid. Jim Burrows starts on the inside of row number 3, alongside this next mini, that's Julian Crossley, and then Richard Spriggs Anglia and Andy Johnson's Toyota Corona line up on row number 4. Row 5 has Jim Utting's Alpha and another mini, that's of Tim Dodwell, but I see there that the Jim Burrows mini, due to start in 5th position, stranded in the assembly area and getting a push, so I think he will start right at the back.
So that'll be interesting to watch Jim come through the field. We are preparing ourselves then for the race start. Good view there of the front row, which is creeping an awful lot there. The red lights haven't even gone out and the poleman had already disappeared from shot. But strangely enough, it's Roger Stanford that gets the better of the starts, although Brian Stevens from pole position got away really well. In fact, ahead of the lights going out, it's the green Cortina of Stanford that leads this big field through the opening few corners. There's Les Nash in 3rd position, the purple car, and that could be Thomas Lely DeVille as well in number 4, I think it is, just sneaking through there into 4th position. So we've got Cortinas 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th heading up the hill, up Hairy Hill to the hairpin at the top there. Brian Stevens struggling to stick with the pace here of Roger Stanford. He's got away well, and charging up the inside there is Nick Jones in the number 8 machine. Now he's not qualified so well. Obviously the pace of the car much better than his starting position on the grid, so be interested to see him pick off quite a few cars as well. We haven't mentioned Richard Sprigg, who is sat there in 5th position in the first non-Cortina. His Anglia's gone well from the off. And there is the Nick Jones car that we saw blasting at the inside of a number of cars at the top of Hairy Hill in the blue and yellow livery.
It was the green number 74 Austin A35 of Jeremy Knight that he saw in quite close quarters up at the hairpin. Didn't quite make it ahead of that car at that point, but Nick Jones, who had problems in race 1 and was one of half a dozen retirements alongside the likes of Joe Allenby Byrne and Stephen Sprigg and Andy Messam, who will be making their way through from towards the back of the grid, as will this man, number 27, Jim Burrows. And already on lap 1 he's made up 5 places in his little mini, that despite starting from the assembly area, so he gave everyone else a sort of 200-yard head start as well. Round North Bend they go then, and there you can see the green car of the race leader Roger Stanford with in 2nd place Brian Stevens, but no surprise really that these two are well out front, because they did both get a considerable advantage before the red lights went out, and I wonder if the clerk of the course might take a decision on that, Johnny.
So it's starting to get a little bit close now for 3rd and 4th position, because Thomas Lely DeVille starting to close in on Les Nash. The cars in front of them, the two leaders, starting to stretch their legs a little bit though, with Roger Stanford in that green car, uncatchable at the moment by Brian Stevens in the red machine, but Les Nash will need to be wary of the closing white Cortina in his rear view mirror. There's the famous purple car of Les Nash working its way through North Bend, and here's Nick Jones a little bit sideways there, losing some time in the Anglia, but so does the man in front of him, Richard Sprigg. They head down the hill now towards the final corner of the lap at Paddock and head through this right-hander, again a bit sideways for Richard Sprigg, but he seems to be happy with that style of driving. And there is another glimpse of Jim Burrows again from the back of the grid, trying to get up to 5th position ideally, which is where he should have started on the grid. He's got a few cars in front of him though, including Andy Messam in the red Austin Mini 7, Stephen Sprigg in the similarly coloured to Richard Sprigg's Cortina there in the yellow, green and white livery, and here's Nick Jones closing in on Richard Sprigg. Again, Sprigg really sideways, and that means that the Anglia can get a bit of time, or gather a bit of time up on the similar car. They're again really sideways, almost at a 90-degree angle there going through North Bend, but Sprigg just about controls it and Nick Jones can't capitalise.
Yeah, Richard Sprigg very much picking up where he left off in the previous race. Very spectacular in that car, but seemingly Nick Jones not able to capitalise on that. So these two cars then now battling over 5th and 6th position. There you can see the Toyota and the Alfa. And then you've got that gaggle of cars coming through. You've got Stephen Sprigg and you've got Jim Burrows. These two have almost tracked each other through the field from the back of the grid. Sprigg in the 76 car, Burrows in the 27 car. Then you've got Andy Messam in his Mini. You've got the Jeremy Knight A35 as well. There you can see the Worsley 1500 just about to be lapped by number 51, which is Joe Allenby Byrne, also a non-finisher from the earlier race. So good to see the driver from the South Coast back out for this particular event in this pre-1966 saloon and touring car race. Great array of machinery going back 45 or more years these days. Here is that 77 car again, still Richard Sprigg ahead of Nick Jones.
And 5th and 6th positions overall, the first of the non-Cortinas. Remember, it's 4 Cortinas out in front. Roger Stanford easily leading from Brian Stevens. Lots of different, or 2 different lines here running through the hairpin just out of Cheston's Drift, and then they're heading now towards Devil's Elbow, the left-hander, with only a small runoff area, so you need to make sure you get your braking point spot on. A little bit of curve taken by Richard Sprigg there. Again, some more sideways action, but we're used to that by now. Nick Jones is able to close up a little bit, but the inside line being defended well into North Bend, so no opportunity to glide up the inside there for Nick Jones. There is the race leader, still Roger Stanford in number 11.
In the first race, of course, he had a great but rather combative battle with Les Nash, and you can see the battle scars on Les Nash's car when we get a shot of that. But in that left hooker, Roger Stanford is actually driving that car really spectacularly, as spectacularly indeed as Richard Sprigg. But he's still leading the race in the number 11 car. Back down Dover Slope he goes towards the Devil's Elbow. The crowd, such as it is, enjoying this classic saloon race and being transported back in time 40 years or so, as we say. This is the Sprigg-Jones battle. The two Anglias together then. Very close indeed as they head through Chesson Strip, back down the hill towards the Devil's Elbow they go. Nick Jones trying to have a look up on the inside here, but not close enough to make it through. And that time, I was going to say, slightly less sideways for Richard Sprigg. Well, it was. And now look, they're being joined as well by Joe Allenby Byrne in another of the Cortinas, the Cortina GT. He's going to be with them in this battle for 5th, 6th and now 7th place before much longer.
The green Morris Minor of Alan Boyce getting in the way a little bit there, but the two Anglias safely through without too much of a delay. Heading down the hill then, Nick Jones and Richard Sprigg. Quick dab on the brakes to take the right-hander at paddock, and Nick Jones runs out wide there. You can do that because the gravel trap doesn't start immediately at the edge of the track, so a little bit of runoff available for you. Here's Andy Messam with some good speed again through paddock corner. He's running side by side with the Toyota Corona of Andy Johnson and squeezes by on the outside, so well-timed manoeuvre there. Remember that he didn't finish the earlier race, so had to start from the back of the grid, and he's passing cars hand over fist at the moment, having a good spell mid-race. The two Anglias either side there of the Wolsey of Anthony Warnes. Still no change in position though, because Richard Sprigg has managed to stay ahead of Nick Jones, and that I think is the Joe Allenby Byrne car as well getting involved, and Allenby Byrne is going to split the two Anglias in his Cortina GT.
Up to 6th position he now goes then, so Cortina's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and now 6th positions, with the 5th place car being the Little Anglia of Richard Sprigg. And the Cortinas and the Anglias of course were very much the cars to have back in periods, along with the little Minis of course as well, and sometimes you'd see some big Jaguars out there too back in the 60s. But we go towards the front of the field, and still very little to choose between the 3rd and 4th place cars. The two Cortinas of Les Nash and Tom Lally DeVille, both of them have been racing these cars for many years now. Les in particular raced them almost in period, certainly in the very early 1970s. You would have seen him racing them. He turns his way through paddock now. Les having something of a quieter race this time. It was a little bit destructive early on, as we've said. Look, you can see the left front headlamp cover has been taped over, where there was some damage sustained to that after contact with Roger Stanford in the earlier race. Through the right-hander they go at Chesson's Drift, down the Dover Slope, past the main spectator area here at Lyddon Hill, and up towards the left-hander he goes. Problems there though, there's some fluid and smoke coming out of Les Nash's car, and he spins round and he's gone into the gravel there, so Les Nash looks to be out of the race. His rival Tom Lally DeVille can continue, but Les Nash I think is going to have to get out of his car.
Yeah, it's a shame that for Les, because it's a mechanical issue obviously that's knocked him out of the race rather than a mistake. And Nick Jones is going a little bit wide at the same corner as well, and that's presumably because of the fluid that's been laid down by Les Nash. Just couldn't get the car stopped, so the marshal will come to his aid. Oh no, hang on a minute, the marshal's backed up because there's another car coming into the gravel trap as well, and that is the Mini of Andy Messam, the number 1 car that was getting through the field so well earlier on, has obviously gone off on the same fluid and whacked Nick Jones there in the blue and yellow car. The red flags come out, as you can see, after such a big impact, and to stop any more cars joining the scene, the St John's ambulance quickly towards that area as well to make sure that everyone's okay. Fortunately, the marshal that was about to come to the aid of Nick Jones backed out of it. There's the spin for Les Nash, and the fluid gets onto the rear tyres and spins him round on the spot. He ends up in the gravel trap, but then there's more excitement to come, Ian.
There certainly is. But so far, so quiet. Marshall goes out to just check that Les Nash is okay, get him out of the car, and at this point he will have half an eye what's coming next, which is the Nick Jones car. There he is, pulls up at relatively sedate speed, so Les Nash is packed off to the safety of the barrier. Marshall heads over. Oh, hang on, no, he could see the red Mini coming in at a great pace, unabated speed, off on the fluid. Unfortunately, damage to 2 cars there, quite unnecessarily really, because they were both in the gravel trap at the time. This is how the results look though. Roger Stanford getting the win by 2.5 seconds from Brian Stevens. No penalties applied for any jump starts. Thomas Lely DeVille in 3rd place, and Joe Allenby Byrne getting credited with 4th. Looking further back down the order, 2 drivers there unlapped. In 11th place, Jeremy Knight, and in 12th place, Tim Dodwell in his Austin Cooper S. A great range of Minis and Morris Minors and Saabs further down the order.
So just looking forward to our Blue Oval Saloon Series race, and Steve Horner, who lines up 4th on the grid for this one. Steve, I understand you weren't too happy with your start in the first one.
Definitely not. Into 1st, a lot of wheel spin, managed 2nd, then straight into 5th, and the Cosworth with all that power came shooting past me. But I managed to hold the position then and stayed 5th till the end of the race, and no one else got close to me, fortunately, from behind.
You got a little bit of a better head start in this one with 4th on the grid, but you got Simon Gent pretty quick in that Ford car, Steve Weatherly very quick as well, so maybe realistically just looking to hold position here?
I think that's right, yes. I want to get a good start so as I can hold position. If I can finish 4th, I should be well pleased with that. Yeah.
And to put it into context, of course, it is a class pole.
It is, yes, yeah. I mean, the other cars on there have got a lot more power than me, so I'm very pleased to be that far up the grid at this point. So all I've got to do is hold it now, which is not my favourite position, but I intend to do that today.
It's been a promising start to the debut season for the Blue Oval Saloon Series, and we move on now at Linden Hill to a non-point scoring round of the series, which involves 1 or 2 invites as well to the usual field of cars. So Steve Weatherly, who's taken pole position, is in the invitation class. He starts alongside series regular Craig Rayner. Steve Horner and Simon Gent on row 2 ahead of Craig Jamieson, and the second of the invited cars, Andy Pike, in his red Mark II Escort. Nigel Craig and Malcolm Wise are next up, just ahead of Jeff Windsor and James Horner, and then further back watch out for Brian Long, Tim Mizzen, Philip Bendel and Joanne Gordon. All in Fiestas, they'll be very close throughout the race.
So 5 red lights already on the gantry, some creeping there from Steve Weatherly, and it's done him no good at all because he's made quite a poor start in the end. Then he's in the invitation class, Sierra Sapphire, that was on pole position, but no mistake from Craig Rayner there. He's gone into the lead. Weatherly has lost 3 positions, I think. Slots into 4th place then, behind the other invitation class car. That's the Mark II Escort of Andy Pike, the red number 7 car that's there in 3rd position. So it's Rayner already with a sizable advantage from Simon Gent in 2nd place. In 3rd place it's Andy Pike. In 4th place it's Steve Weatherly, and 5th looks to be Malcolm Wise. Change there for 3rd though. Through on the inside goes our pole position man Steve Weatherly. Takes 3rd place away from Andy Pike. This grid determined by 2nd fastest qualifying times this morning. Weatherly would have been on pole position had he been eligible to take part in the earlier race, but that was for points, if you like, as far as the series was concerned, and that one was of course won by Craig Rayner in the end. Now through to 2nd place goes Steve Weatherly after that poor start.
Yeah, so he's made his way back up to 2nd, but there is a lot of ground for him to make up on race leader Craig Rayner. Still quite some time though of the race to go, so he needs to get his head down and offer no concentration for the cars behind him. He should be able to open up a gap between himself and Simon Gent, and if he can get his head down, as I say, and really put in some good lap times, he may be on the back of Craig Rayner sooner than he thinks. Simon Gent, though, under some pressure from Andy Pike in the red Mark II Escort, and Andy's trying to squeeze around the outside of North Bend, but that's not an opportunity just yet. Malcolm Weiss in 5th position, and the two Fiestas of both Steve Horner and James Horner having a good scrap here. But up the inside comes Nigel Craig in the silver Mark II Escort and makes a move on the slightly newer shaped Fiesta of James Horner. Gathers a place up, and Jeff Windsor is looking racy as well, just tucked in behind. So James Horner in the Fiesta will need to be wary of the much more powerful Escort Cosworth of Jeff Windsor, who is looking for an opportunity here. He comes then up the inside prior to Devil's Elbow, gets that move done nice and neatly.
So Jeff Windsor there in number 42 climbs his way up the hill just behind Nigel Craig then. Craig, who started one row ahead of him on the grid on the inside of row number 4, Windsor on the inside of the 5th row in 9th position. Those three cars together. There's Simon Beamont as well. You get a chance to have a quick look at him in his more modern Escort in the background there. There though is number 15, James Horner. His father, Steve Horner,